March 2010. Infinity Ward co-founders and creators of the ever-popular Call of Duty franchise, Jason West and Vince Zampella, are fired by Activision. The massive success of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare enabled them to renegotiate contracts, which should have granted them heftier bonuses as well as the enduring creative control over the future of the franchise. While Activision initially did agree to this deal, apparently they kept a cold shoulder about it, and Infinity Ward knew. They struggled to find a way to make themselves independent, and ultimately this led to the firings and the lawsuits. April 2010. 1 month later, Mr. West and Mr. Zampella start their own studio, Respawn Entertainment. It did take Respawn a few years to bring out their first title, that'd be the Xbox exclusive Titanfall of May 11th, 2014. Even before the game had been publicly released, it was showered with praise and awards. It was revealed at E3 the previous year and was handed a staggering 60 rewards. As IGN put it, it was the quote-unquote next big thing. Now, when it did actually release, most people were pretty pleased with it, but it was lacking in a few areas. This was a multiplayer-only game, no single-player campaign here. Now, much further down the line, it did get some spin-off sequels. The most up-to-date is the Battle Royale Apex Legends. This one is probably still popular now, but I don't know, I never played it, and I'm not going to talk about it because it did one thing massively wrong. Titanfall cut a single-player story, and then Apex Legends decided to take that another step further and cut the mechs. The Asian market wanted a taste of Titanfall. Nexon produced their own version, Titanfall Online, however it only got a short regional beta launch in 2016 before those doors were shuttered. A Titanfall Frontline mobile card battler met the same fate. I guess Nexon must have been unhappy with how the IP was performing in their game that made full release, because they did have one of those. Oddly enough, a Clash Royale-styled mobile game called Titanfall Assault. Anyways, enough with the spin-offs. Titanfall did not have single-player. I guess that rubbed more than just a few players the wrong way because Respawn followed up with a sequel, Titanfall 2. And that, my friends, is the topic of the video today, and I've got to say, not only does it retain the multiplayer aspect, but it has a pretty robust single-player campaign too. One that I would even go as far as saying is one of the best first-person shooter game campaigns I think I've ever played. So it probably goes without saying, by review scores, I think Titanfall 2 is the highest rated mech game ever made, which is maybe a little surprising. I do think the fan bases of things like MechWarrior and Armored Core are more fanatical, however I think they also tend to nitpick the intricacies of their games more, and just overall those games are more niche, more specialized. Titanfall 2 on the other hand is an experience much more broad. And this is actually the second time I'm making this video entirely. You see, a couple of years ago when I had the first early inklings to start this whole MechTube project, I figured not only did I need a decent backlog of things to cover in the future, but I also needed to pick up a few of the big hitter games to get a good baseline understanding of what the genre was all about. Titanfall 2 being an easy choice because not only is it the highest rated by review score in the mech category on Steam, but it's also so cheap. And I'm a financially insecure person. Okay, jokes aside, it's always like $2 every time I see it pop up on my Steam store. Seriously, if you don't have or never played this one before, it's worth way more than $2. Anyways, I did have a review video, but I didn't really know how to get the channel together. So it was a video that unfortunately ended up falling into the aether. But that's okay, because I played the game a second time to make review number 2 for Titanfall number 2. And who am I, you might ask? Hi, I'm Empty. I'm a bit of a mech noob who decided that I liked giant robots so much I have to play every single mech game ever, and record my thoughts, feelings, and opinions about them here on this YouTube channel. I do reviews, first looks, showcases on upcoming games, or specialized mech genre mashups, and sometimes just general commentary. If you'd like to keep up with my journey, feel free to hit the subscription button.
Oh, hell. Ship must have power cycled the sim pod since last time. We'll have to recalibrate it.
To provide some world building setup, the initial game did have some plot going on. It featured an area of space known as the Frontier and a war between the Frontier Militia and the Interstellar Manufacturing Corporation, or IMC. As you could kind of expect from the names, the militia is looking for independence and the Megacorp is fighting for resource domination. I didn't play Titanfall 1, but I'm led to believe near the end of its plot there featured a segment about the IMC taking a critical blow, losing a major refueling base. Unfortunately for the frontiersmen, the core systems seem to have sent reinforcements by the time Titanfall 2 takes place. The game begins as your player character, a certain Jack Cooper, is given some VR training by a Captain Ty Lastimosa. Not only does this serve as a gameplay tutorial, but we also find out that the simulation is based on the planet called Harmony. The captain confides that this is his homeworld. Is Lastimosa feeling sentimental, or did the writing team drop some foreshadowing? Anyways, just as we're about to get to the training section with a Titan, that's what the in-game mechs are called, alarms blare and we have to pull out of the virtual reality simulation and prepare for real battle, as it seems the IMC has managed to blast our ship from outer space. So we, and many others, escape in drop pods only to land ambushed on the alien world of Typhon. Our goal is to survive against a swarm of Terminator-type robot soldiers and regroup with Lastimosa. Unfortunately, Cooper ends up in bad shape as a mercenary group known as the Apex Predators appears, decimating the entire militia team. Except Jack Cooper, who luckily survived under a bush.
We have 18 hours. 18 hours until the Ark is sealed and ready for delivery. Oi, Richter! Leave the corpses alone, you sick bastard. We've got a job to do, eh? We make corpses, we don't clean them up. Let's go!
The threat of the IMC might be gone, but a new one has appeared as the planet's lizard wolves begin scavenging corpses for breakfast. Also, you do manage to find the captain, who uses his dying breath to hand over the reins of his Titan to a new pilot. Being only a rifleman, Cooper doesn't really know how to pilot one of these, but he catches on quite quickly. Part of how he catches on so quick is in how the Titans function. Despite sharing the name of my high school bully, this one goes by BT7274. The game director, Steve Kuda, insisted this stood for a Buddy Titan. I think that goes a long way, as it pretty directly describes how the character plot was inspired by a subgenre of film called Buddy Cop. These are stories about two characters who are often at odds with each other for one reason or another, but must work together to solve conflict. In the case of Titanfall 2, BT is a robot who presents as very literal and sometimes cold. Cooper is a human with, you guessed it, human qualities. There isn't nearly as much friction here as there is with actual buddy cop movies, but that's okay because it's just an inspirational point for the relationship dynamic. Another inspirational point is the anime show Gargantia on the Verdurous planet. I think in that case the biggest carryover idea is that the mech is fully sentient on his own, but also can be piloted. Also, I watched like half of this show. I really ought to go finish watching the rest. Okay, so pilot ship of BT is transferred to our guy, and so is the mission. Captain Lastimosa was supposed to lead us to a rendezvous with another pilot named Major Eli Anderson. Last we heard, he was at an IMC laboratory. It's a long walk there, which mostly serves as a shooting gallery on awesome set pieces, however also includes the subplot of us slowly picking off the Apex Merc crew.
You were not invited to Kane's party, and that's why you're dead. Well, another runaway hero with an SRS Vanguard class Titan. Woo! Now we're talking!
First, we blast down the unhinged pilot Kane. We also steal his helmet radio and listen to all the other Merc communication. After that, we encounter a certain Ash and bury her in the ground too. A lot of people might point these characters out as being a highlight plot point, but for me personally, I felt they were a bit underdeveloped. A lot of the lead-up is pretty lacking in personality. Mostly you just hear them yell about how their soldiers should have killed you already, which ends up as they gruffly exclaim, "I guess I'll just go do it myself," before getting dropped by BT. I don't know, I just kind of felt like they were one-dimensional.
BT, I found Anderson. He's, in the ceiling.
Continuing on, we do make it to the IMC lab where we find Mr. Anderson's corpse. And also, probably one of the coolest levels in video gaming. You see, time anomalies here seem to be happening. Current time, the place is wrecked, but previous time, everything is in pristine condition. Once we get to the Major's body, he has a glove device that enables us to manually time travel. We see not just his previous movements through the facility, but also bounce back and forth between two gunfights. It's totally awesome.
4-2. The fold weapons power source is called the Arc. Doesn't look like they've perfected the casing. This one's empty. The Arc must be somewhere else. Anderson out.
The big deal here plot-wise is that we discover the IMC built a planet-destroying machine here named a fold weapon. It's powered by something called the Arc, and as a return to the tutorial, a foreshadow, the preliminary target for this fold weapon is in fact our deceased captain's homeworld, the planet Harmony. After finding out about this weapon of supermassive destruction, we regroup with some more militia units and attempt to make radio contact with the Greater Frontiers fleet. We get reinforcements and also take out another Apex Predator. This time it's the Arnold Schwarzenegger-inspired Richter. Shortly thereafter, we do destroy another one of these guys, which was my favorite, Viper. So we assault a base housing the Ark, and they make a run for it in ships, so we chase down the ships. Viper has a flying Titan buzzing around the ships like a wasp until we battle him. Very cool. Our buddy Titan team does manage to make it into the correct ship, the Draconis, that carries the Ark. BT shoves it into his pilot seat, but history repeats itself, and we're on our second crashing ship of the game.
I need your help.
Abandoned ship. Altitude warning. 6,000 meters.
Quickly, we need to get off the ship. We are running out of time. This way, Cooper.
The crash causes us damage to the point of capture by the leader of the Apex Predators, a man named Cuban Blisk, along with his second-in-command, a woman who only goes by Sloane. They do manage to retrieve the Ark from us before leaving the team for dead.
Say goodnight.
Fortunately, BT's eyeball works as a seer kit, so we make our escape and put his mind into a fresh bot and head off to save the day once again.
Hello, Jack.
We smash our way into stopping the weapon, killing Sloan. I guess this makes Blisk think we're cool, so instead of getting to fight him, he just sort of walks off and says he's not paid to kill us, which I guess is one way to end as the story thread.
Either. Yeah, you earned this, eh?
Anyways, we fail to stop the weapon from actually being loaded with the Ark, so as a last-ditch effort to save Planet Harmony, the couple throws themselves into the weapon itself. BT ends up throwing Cooper to safety, but sacrifices himself for the greater good. Cooper gives a nice post-mortem speech, and the credits roll. Overall, I think the story was pretty good. It achieved what it needed to for a cinematic single-player experience, lending itself well to the set pieces that make up the game levels. One thing I did, however, find lacking was in the villains. This is mostly presented as the Apex Predators group, however, as Blisk puts it at the end of the game, they are really just hired help, and not really the progenitors of the IMC that we are supposed to be fighting against. That'd be General Elias Martyr. Problem is, they put this guy off-screen the entire game. In that way, it feels more like the main enemy is a vague idea rather than a tangible foe. Gameplay-wise, this one plays as a modern first-person shooter. You can pick up 2 primary weapons, a sidearm, and a grenade. On top of that, you do get a tactical ability like temporary invisibility. The guns themselves are pretty much all bullet-based, and there isn't much in the way of weird, crazy, or out-there science fiction-y stuff. All just different sorts of rifles, machine guns, shotguns, and missile launchers. The more out-there future tech stuff is more involved in something that sets this game apart from most other shooters, and that is that this one specifically is a movement shooter. What I mean by that is that your character wears a special suit that allows some elite parkour moves. Running, sliding, wall running, double jumping, and potentially grapple hooking around if you're playing multiplayer. While playing the campaign, this active movement is showcased incredibly well throughout every level. The map design is part shooting gallery and part jungle gym. This is a shooter that sometimes feels like it's just as much a 3D platformer set in the first person. My favorite examples of this level design would probably be the extremely memorable back-to-back Into the Abyss and Effect and Cause. You see, Into the Abyss takes place while you try to find a shortcut to the laboratory present in the next level, Effect and Cause. This accidentally takes you through a factory. This factory is a world foundry, and it creates prefabricated chunks of terrain for use in the IMC dynamic testing facility. You have to move on and off these platforms as they swing through the assembly line, getting built piece by piece, and also fight off the facility's guards as you're spotted along the way. It was very cool having to navigate all of this as it moved sideways, upside down, or was leading you into your demise as different parts of automation do different things to the chunk. Near the end, the chunk you've ridden ends up sideways, and you've got to jump your way to the top. Unfortunately, once you've made it up to the top, the machine starts moving again and the whole thing is brought up into an arena where you and some other captured militiamen fight off enemy troops before escape. After this, Effect and Cause is essentially a single map happening simultaneously across 2 time zones, as the gimmick for this level is the time travel. And boy does it handle it cool. In the current timeline, the laboratory is in ruins. Parts are burning, broken, defunct, and overgrown. You're fighting off remnants of enemy robots clinging to their little android lives like zombies, as well as those pesky, scaly lizard dogs, but you do have to bounce into the past timeline where the map is still put together. In the older timeline, things have yet been destroyed, so you face off with fully equipped military forces. And even further, while you're having this double firefight across 2 time zones, you're doing the jumpy stuff to avoid imminent danger or move through blocked locations. An example being, in one timeline, the floor is crushed into the floor and on fire, but in the other is perfectly normal, except in the perfectly normal one the doorway is locked, so you have to wall run back and forth and hit your time change button just on time to make it through the door correctly. And if that wasn't enough, the reason this game falls into my review criteria is because there are, of course, mechs too. Here, they're called Titans, and BT is yours. The Titans control much the same way as the pilot, that being first-person shooter, but they get their own distinct loadouts, are bigger, more armored, and notably can't jump. That is, unless you've explicitly equipped a loadout with a jetpack. Anyways, that means that not only does the pilot get to play this speedy and lithe game of ninjaing themselves up all the walls, but a lot of the battle areas open up to a sort of 2-plane arena which separates out where a Titan can and cannot go. A game of cat and mouse, or pilot and mech. Also, the Titan loadouts take up more of the sci-fi fantasy space that I said was lacking in the standard pilot weapons. Here, you'll get more stuff like split beam rifles, thermal launchers, plasma railguns, bouncing bullets, multi-lock on target fire, and of course, the robot with a giant sword. And I almost forgot, but each Titan has a core ability too, which is like a big attack that has a big long wait cooldown. The enemies in this game weren't really all that varied, but each one has enough of its own quirks to keep every gun battle interesting. The human soldiers are pretty much what you'd expect, army dudes with the same sort of guns as you. They aren't pilots though, so they don't know how to do all that fancy jumpy move stuff, and they tend to move in squad units. Sometimes you'll encounter one of them with a heavier armor and a shield. Similarly to these human squads, you'll see robots of similar likeness. These guys are hackable if you're within melee range, seem to take a little more damage to take down, and also work sort of like zombies. If you blast them to pieces, they'll sometimes still come crawling at you. A lot of cool sequences where a horde of them come crawling out of the foggy depths to assault the frontier. After that, you got some mid-sized robots called Reapers. Maybe they're just a bit stronger, bigger version of the other robots, and maybe they're just a smaller version of the enemy Titans. I haven't really decided yet. And the IMC has their own Titans, which all come in the various loadouts you're able to pick up throughout the game. The final push of the game features a pretty big battle sequence between lots of Titans, both on the Frontiers team and the IMC. Beyond that, there are boss fights, which are all the Apex Predators mercenary group characters. These are stronger and much more personal battles that tend to be separated into their own arena spaces. I wish I could say these fights were full of interesting mechanics or were memorable for one reason or another, but they didn't seem to do all that much different, and I tended to end them very quickly. It was kind of just like fighting the basic version of the Titan loadout, except this time it has more health and yells personalized insults at you. As far as online multiplayer goes, because I know that can be a big proponent of these sorts of games, I found there were still people playing. A surprising number, actually. I did experience a bit of delay getting into a match, but every time I decided to give PvP a go, it has gone through. Even into matches with screeching teenagers and voice communications, just like how I imagine it would have been playing this one during its heyday. I didn't spend the most time here, so some game modes specifically might be dead, though I have heard that the North Star client is a recommended community group that keeps their own servers running, as well as crafts their own mods. Okay, so I did say this is PvP. You get to select your own loadout for Pilot and Titan before dropping into game modes like Bounty Hunt, Attrition, Amped Hardpoint, Last Titan Standing, Capture the Flag, Pilot vs. Pilot, Titan Brawl, Live Fire, or even co-op non-PvP Frontier Defense. I think most people play Attrition, which is 6v6 deathmatch that includes NPC soldiers running around. Oh, well, also, besides picking your loadout, you get to do the other fun customization stuff like pick your pilot's helmet, change the camo colors of your Titan, build out a call sign, there's all that jazz too. It has a level up system that unlocks further customizations as you play. Visually, this one holds up pretty well. Typically, games with an aim for realism tend to age very poorly and very quickly, but this is not so much with Titanfall 2. Sure, characters are noticeably aged, but besides that, things are still very visually appealing. I think a lot of this is in how varied the environments are. Each place you go sorts out a landscape worthy for viewing, whether it's the crispiness of a jungle with a cascade of shipwrecks burning in the background, a factory building sectionalized fake planets, or fog-laden deserts underneath a monolith satellite dish. Mech design also does a good job feeling like it's designed its own identity that is visually respectful with the rest of the game. A lot of the time you'll see mechs and their visual inspirations will be very clear, but here I feel the Titans really become their own and look really good while doing it. My absolute favorite is the North Star with spindly legs, a round torso, and a little circle head. He's kinda cute and reminds me of a bug. But of course, besides that, we've got chunkier, almost diver-like suits, the Scorch, the Legion, or skinnier, speedy boys like the melee-oriented Ronin. And of course, BT. BT is iconic.
Wind, 3 knots, heading 274. Range, 95 meters. Projectile mass, 89 kilograms. Trust me.
Audio-wise, this one surely has a cinematic feel, like watching a movie on the big screen. Things are very robust, very high quality. The soundtrack, composed by Stephen Barton, was in fact nominated for some awards even. Barton himself is even credited with additional tunes for the Shrek 2 movie, so we know we're about to hear something good. Personally, I'm not actually the biggest fan of the bombastic orchestral sounds and much prefer the quieter, more introspective moments. In between bouts of horns and surmounting violins, past the crashing of cymbals and moody cellos, there sits an ethereal quality, magical and serene female vocals, operatic. This kind of gives me a Halo vibe, and I wonder if there was some inspiration from the theme over there being the whole Gregorian chants thing. It is a bit different here, it feels a lot less holy, and it feels more Magitech, and it sharply cuts its way through the instrumentation. The vocals side of things is pretty good too. You'll hear Matt Mercer and Glenn Steinbaum the most, as they are the main two, Cooper and BT. Matt Mercer's voice seems to really permeate the game's industry. Here, his character is a standard American everyman and less of a large standout. In terms of standouts, the game does invest in diverse characters, like Blisk, carrying a South African accent. In this regard, I do feel Richter, being a near parody of a certain Austrian bodybuilder, was a bit over the top. I'd say that was probably the only immersion-breaking moment for me.
Units, this is Richter. Get to the beacon now. Find den kleinen Mann und lass mich nicht hängen.
First things first, this is an EA game. Good old Electronic Arts. When I first bought this, I didn't realize it was, or I might have avoided buying it completely because I don't like EA. My biggest gaming platform is PC, which means I'm a heavy Steam user, and when you get an EA game, it also has to download its very own launcher. It also has to have its very own accounts created. I'm super annoyed by this practice of a launcher launching a game's launcher to launch the game. Besides that, in terms of technical issues, my first boot up of the game, for some reason my mouse did not work. The menu was fine, but actually getting into the game in first person, no work. This, along with the game not remembering my resolution settings, was a repeated problem. I guess some program overlay does not get along with Titanfall 2. I don't know if it's Steam, Discord, OBS, I don't know, I'd turn them all off and then the issue would fix itself, or I'd restart everything, and eventually I got it to work and was able to play, obviously. When playing the single-player campaign, upon getting to the 6th mission, the beacon, I fell through the map. I fell through the map a lot. Since this mission has you up in the air, jumping between structures, it became an impossible feat to complete. I'm not exactly sure what happened to the collision physics here, but I had to restart the mission entirely over from the mission select screen after being nearly complete with it. Now it did, thankfully, work the second time around, however, that was a very frustrating bug. I don't want to replay a level over again. That's annoying. In terms of game design, specifically, I did really enjoy Titanfall 2, and I think it is a fantastic game. However, if I really want to nitpick about its place in the mech genre game category itself, I do not think it's the best mech game ever. While it does show diversity between an on-foot pilot and being in a mech suit, I find the actual mech handling to be rather dull and uninspired in comparison to other big robot franchises. I think the developers likely felt the same way, as their next step with the series was to remove that aspect entirely in favor of a more strict focus on the pilot movement mechanics. My gripe is that I don't feel like the Titan controls really feel different enough to being on foot. Sure, you're bigger, which is really more of a visual thing than a gameplay one, as the presentation of this is surely lacking in things like destructible environments. What I mean is that it just kind of feels like you're a taller dude shooting stuff and not necessarily in a machine built for war. Your moveset is a little different, you don't get a jump, but more or less you're still pretty able-bodied and agile. There's no tank controls that separate your torso from your legs, there's no intricate customization systems, there's no limb dismemberment or heat and fuel mechanics. Now, I'm not sure Titanfall overall would be a better game if it did have any of these sorts of systems in place, but when analyzing it specifically as a mech game, I do find this to be one of the weaker points. If you haven't played Titanfall 2, go do it. It's on sale all the time for what is essentially pocket change, and I'd say the single-player campaign is a must-play for anyone even remotely interested in first-person shooters. Besides being a solid story with a cinematic soundtrack and graphics that tend to hold up, the gameplay itself does a lot of really fun stuff. It produces a good dichotomy between being on foot and being in a mech, along with some fluid movement that makes it feel sort of like a speedrunning platformer game and not just a shooting gallery first-person shooter. And even though it's coming up on 10 years old, it still has a decent online player count in my experience. It might take a minute to find a match, but there are still matches to be found. Great game that deserves its place within the top of the mountain that is mech games.